In the sleek conference room of TechVanguard's Austin headquarters, a principled head of operations was about to challenge decades of corporate hierarchy. What started as a routine all-hands meeting took a shocking turn when they came face with a new CEO's authoritarian vision. Alex Rivera wasn't your typical middle manager. For 8 years, they had spent their life building collaborative teams and turning around failing projects, known for their unwavering commitment to inclusive leadership. When they encountered Marcus Sterling's masculine leadership philosophy being imposed on their progressive workplace, they had no idea they were walking into a systematic purge. Alex's decision to publicly question Sterling's methods would lead to their professional exile and the company's near collapse. What began as a management philosophy clash would become a corporate catastrophe. TechVanguard would never be the same after discovering that the person you cast out might be the only one who can save you. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The auditorium at TechVanguard had never felt this tense. Alex Rivera shifted in their seat, watching as Marcus Sterling adjusted the microphone with the practiced precision of someone accustomed to commanding attention. The morning Austin sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the assembled employees who had built this company's reputation on collaboration and innovation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling began, his voice carrying the crisp authority of his military background, "today marks a new chapter for TechVanguard." Alex had heard the rumors, of course. The board's decision to bring in an outsider as CEO had sent ripples of uncertainty through the company's open-plan offices and casual Friday culture. But seeing Sterling in person, standing ramrod straight in his tailored navy suit, silver hair gleaming under the lights, made the reality hit with uncomfortable force. For too long, this industry has been infected with what I can only call soft leadership, Sterling continued, clicking to his first slide. Consensus building, endless meetings, decision-making by committee. His tone carried unmistakable disdain. This approach might feel good, but it doesn't deliver results. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Alex glanced around, noting the worried expressions on familiar faces. Elena Vasquez, the brilliant young developer who'd joined them fresh from coding boot camp, was frowning at her laptop screen, fingers poised over keys as if ready to take notes or send a worried message. To her team lead, Becca Torres, Alex's deputy for the past 3 years, sat rigid in her chair, her usual warm demeanor replaced by careful neutrality. "What we need," Sterling's voice rose, "is what I call masculine leadership. Decisive, hierarchical, clear chains of command with accountability at every level." The slide behind him displayed a traditional org chart, a pyramid of boxes and lines that looked nothing like TechVanguard's collaborative structure. Alex felt their jaw tighten. 8 years of building trust, empowering teams, and creating an environment where the best ideas could come from anyone, from senior architects to junior developers, was being dismissed as weakness. "I've studied this company's metrics," Sterling continued, "and while you've achieved moderate success, you've left tremendous potential on the table. Indecision costs money. Endless collaboration breeds mediocrity. What we need is leaders who lead and followers who follow." The words landed like stones in still water, creating expanding circles of unease. Alex could see David Park near the front, sitting straighter now, nodding with what looked like genuine enthusiasm. David had always been competitive, always comparing his advancement to others, always questioning why Alex's collaborative approach seemed to earn more recognition than his aggressive pursuit of results. "Questions?" Sterling asked, scanning the room with the confidence of someone who expected compliance rather than challenge. Alex's hand went up before they could second-guess the impulse. Years of working-class upbringing had taught them that respect was earned, not demanded, and everything about Sterling's presentation felt like a fundamental assault on those values. "Yes?" Sterling's gaze found Alex in the crowd, and something flickered in his expression. Perhaps recognition that this was Alex Rivera, the head of operations, whose innovative project management had saved the company millions in the past. 2 years. Alex Rivera, operations, they said, standing. The auditorium fell silent. I'm curious about your perspective on collaborative leadership. Our most successful projects have come from cross-functional teams where developers, designers, and business analysts work together as equals. How does hierarchical decision-making improve on those results? Sterling's smile was sharp. Mr. Rivera. Dr. Rivera, actually. The correction came automatically, a habit from years of having their credentials questioned. Dr. Rivera. The title seemed to stick in Sterling's throat. What you call collaboration, I call diffusion of responsibility. When everyone's in charge, no one's in charge. Great leaders make hard decisions without needing a committee to hold their hand. But your data shows adequate performance, Sterling cut them off. I'm here to deliver exceptional performance. And that requires exceptional leadership, the kind that isn't afraid to ruffle feathers or hurt feelings in service of results. The dismissal was clear, but Alex pressed on. With respect, our client satisfaction scores are in the 95th percentile. Our employee retention will improve when people understand their roles and execute them without question. Sterling's voice hardened. Dr. Rivera, I appreciate your perspective, but I wasn't hired to maintain the status quo. I was hired to elevate this company to the next level. Alex sat down, their heart pounding with a mixture of anger and something approaching fear. Not fear for themselves. They had options, other companies that would value their approach, but fear for the employees who didn't have those options. People like Elena, supporting her daughter on a single income. Like Becca, whose husband had been laid off 6 months ago, and who couldn't afford to lose this job. The presentation continued, but Alex barely heard it. They watched faces instead. David Park's eager nodding, Elena's growing confusion, Becca's careful mask of professional attention. And from the board section, Sarah Chen's increasingly worried expression as she watched her protégé face off against the new CEO. One final point, Sterling said, clicking to his last slide. Change is never easy. Some of you will embrace this new direction immediately. Others will need time to adjust. But let me be clear, adjustment isn't optional. This is the direction we're moving, and anyone who can't align with that direction will find opportunities elsewhere. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Alex felt a chill run down their spine, not from fear, but from recognition. They'd seen this before, in their MBA program case studies, in business literature, in the cautionary tales their working-class father had told about bosses who confused fear with respect. Thank you for your attention, Sterling concluded. Department heads, I'll be scheduling one-on-one meetings with each of you this week. We have work to do. As the crowd began to disperse, Alex noticed the immediate clustering, employees gravitating toward others who shared their concerns, quiet conversations starting before people even reached the hallway. The company was already splitting along fault lines Sterling had created in 45 minutes. David Park approached the stage, clearly eager to introduce himself to the new CEO. Alex watched him shake Sterling's hand with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just found his path to advancement. The sight sent a cold realization through Alex's chest. This wasn't just about management philosophy. It was about the soul of the company they'd helped build. Becca appeared at Alex's elbow. Well, she said quietly, that was something. That was a declaration of war, Alex replied, keeping their voice low. Around them, employees were filing out in subdued clusters, the usual post-meeting chatter replaced by worried murmurs. What do we do? Becca asked. Alex looked toward the stage, where Sterling was still talking with David Park and a few other department heads who'd approached him. The new CEO's posture radiated confidence, the bearing of someone who'd never doubted his right to command. "We protect our people," Alex said finally, "however we can." But even as they said it, Alex wondered if protection would be possible in the new TechVanguard Sterling was determined to create. The collaborative culture they'd spent years building felt suddenly fragile, like something that could be dismantled, with a few policy changes and strategic terminations. Sterling's voice carried across the emptying auditorium as he spoke to his new admirers. "Leadership isn't a popularity contest. It's about results. And I intend to get them, regardless of who finds my methods uncomfortable." The challenge was clear. The battle lines were drawn, and Alex Rivera realized they were about to find out exactly how much their principles were worth when going up against someone who saw those principles as obstacles to overcome. Sterling's voice still echoed in Alex's mind 3 days later as they walked through TechVanguard's open office space, trying to maintain some semblance of normal operations. The casual energy that had once defined the company felt strained now, replaced by a careful tension that made every conversation feel like it was being monitored. "Alex, do you have a minute?" Elena Vasquez appeared at their shoulder, her laptop clutched against her chest like armor. The young developer's usual confidence had been replaced by something that looked dangerously close to panic. "Of course. Conference room 3? Elena nodded, glancing around nervously. Alex noticed the gesture, the way Elena's eyes swept the office, checking who might be watching. It was a behavior that hadn't existed 4 days ago, before Sterling's presentation had transformed their workplace into something that felt more like a surveillance state. They settled into the small conference room, Elena closing the door with deliberate care. "I need to request modified hours," she said without preamble. "Sophia's daycare changed their pickup policy. I need to leave at 4:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays." Alex frowned. "That shouldn't be a problem. You've been putting in extra hours anyway, and your code quality is excellent. I'll approve the adjustment." "That's just it." Elena's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I already submitted the request through the new system Sterling implemented. It was denied." "Denied? By who?" "Kevin Wu." Elena's fingers worried at the edge of her laptop. "He said flexible schedules are inconsistent with the new accountability standards, that if I can't commit to standard business hours, maybe I'm not committed to the role." Alex felt anger flare in their chest. Kevin Wu had been a mid-level project manager before Sterling's arrival, competent but unremarkable. Now he was apparently Sterling's enforcer for the new regime. "That's ridiculous. Your performance metrics don't matter anymore," Elena interrupted. "Wu said performance is about presence and dedication, not just deliverables. That working mothers need to prioritize their commitments." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. This was exactly what they'd feared. Sterling's masculine leadership, translating into policies that would systematically exclude anyone who didn't fit his narrow definition of commitment. "Elena, I'll handle this. The request should have come through me anyway." "Alex." Elena's voice carried a warning. "Wu specifically said the old approval processes are being eliminated. All scheduling decisions go through department enforcers now." "Department enforcers?" That's what he called himself. Elena's laugh held no humor. "Said Alex Rivera's soft management was being replaced with accountability structures." Alex stood up, decision crystallizing. "Come on, we're going to Sterling's office." "Alex, no." Elena grabbed their arm. "I can't afford to make waves. Sophia's daycare costs more than my rent. If I lose this job..." The desperation in Elena's voice stopped Alex cold. They looked at this brilliant woman, someone who'd taught herself advanced programming while working 2 jobs to support her daughter, someone who'd single-handedly debugged the Morrison logistics integration that had saved TechVanguard millions, reduced to begging for basic workplace flexibility. "Then I'll go alone," Alex said quietly. That's exactly what Wu said you'd do, Elena replied. He said Sterling was expecting the old guard to resist and that every act of insubordination would be documented. Alex felt the trap closing around them. Sterling wasn't just implementing new policies. He was systematically creating situations designed to force confrontations with anyone who might challenge his authority. Their phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Leadership. Team meeting in 10 minutes. Alex recognized the timing wasn't coincidental. I have to go, they told Elena. But this isn't over. Your request should be approved, and it will be. The conference room for the leadership meeting felt different too. Where before it had been arranged for collaboration, chairs in a circle, everyone at the same level, Sterling had reorganized it with a traditional setup. He sat at the head of a long table, with carefully designated positions for his direct reports. Alex noticed immediately that their usual seat had been moved farther from Sterling's position. David Park, meanwhile, sat at Sterling's right hand, looking pleased with his new proximity to power. Gentlemen, Sterling began, then glanced at Alex and the two other women on the leadership team. And ladies, we need to discuss implementation of our new operational standards. Kevin Wu distributed printed documents, another change from their usual digital collaboration tools. Alex scanned the pages, their alarm growing with each paragraph. The accountability framework eliminated flexible scheduling, remote work, options, and collaborative decision-making processes. It established clear hierarchies with enforcement responsibilities at each level. Questions? Sterling asked. Alex's hand was already rising. This framework will disproportionately impact working parents, particularly women. Elena Vasquez, one of our top developers, needs minimal schedule flexibility for childcare. Under these rules, Dr. Rivera, Sterling's voice cut like ice. Are you suggesting we lower our standards to accommodate personal choices? I'm suggesting that rigid scheduling requirements will cost us valuable talent for no operational benefit. Alex felt their stomach drop, but kept their expression neutral. I see. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Effective immediately, you're being reassigned to Special Projects Coordination. You'll report to Kevin Wu and focus on documentation and process improvement initiatives. The words hit like a physical blow. Special. Projects was where TechVanguard sent employees they couldn't fire but didn't want in meaningful positions. A bureaucratic purgatory of make-work assignments and endless documentation. You're demoting me, Alex said quietly. I'm realigning organizational structure to better reflect our operational priorities. Sterling's tone remained clinical. Your previous role as head of operations required someone who could implement directives without questioning strategic vision. Frankly, Dr. Rivera, your performance yesterday demonstrated that isn't your strength. Alex's hands clenched in their lap. My performance built the systems that saved this company $12 million last year. Under the previous leadership paradigm, Sterling dismissed, what we need now is execution, not endless analysis of social impact. David Park has accepted the operations role. Kevin Wu will oversee the transition. The betrayal cut deeper than Alex had expected. David Park, who'd struggled with complex project management, who'd needed Alex's guidance on the Morrison integration, who'd complained about feeling overlooked, was now being rewarded for his loyalty to Sterling's regime. What about my team? Alex asked. Your former team will be redistributed across operational units. They'll benefit from stronger hierarchical guidance. Alex thought of Elena, still waiting for approval for her schedule modification, of Becca, who'd built her leadership skills through collaborative mentorship, of the junior developers who'd thrived under supportive management. Marcus, Alex used his first name again, watching his jaw tighten. These people trusted me. They've built their careers on the understanding that good work and ethical behavior would be recognized and rewarded. and they'll continue to be recognized, provided they demonstrate appropriate commitment to organizational priorities. Sterling's voice carried a warning. Dr. Rivera, I suggest you focus on your new responsibilities rather than dwelling on past arrangements that no longer serve our needs. Alex stood slowly, recognizing the finality in Sterling's tone. When do I start reporting to Wu? Immediately. He's expecting you in conference room B at 9 for orientation on your new responsibilities. The walk back to the main office felt like a funeral march. Alex could see employees glancing their way, some with sympathy, others with the careful neutrality of people protecting their own positions. Word traveled fast in TechVanguard's open environment, and Alex's demotion would send a clear message to anyone considering resistance to Sterling's changes. Elena intercepted them near the elevator bank, her face tight with worry. Is it true? About the reassignment? Alex nodded, not trusting their voice. God, Alex, I'm so sorry. This is because you stood up for me, isn't it? It's because I stood up for what's right, Alex managed. And Elena, I'd do it again. Tears gathered in Elena's eyes. Wu denied my schedule request. He said with the new structure, accommodation requests need approval from 3 levels up. The process could take weeks. Alex felt rage building in their chest, not just at their own demotion, but at the systematic cruelty being inflicted on good people. Have you looked for other positions? I can't afford to job hunt. Sophia's daycare requires 2 weeks' notice for changes, and most companies want immediate start dates. I'm trapped, Alex. We all are. The elevator arrived, and Alex stepped in, watching Elena's worried face disappear as the doors closed. By the time they reached their floor, Alex had made a decision that would likely cost them everything. Tvarens. Room B felt like an interrogation chamber. Kevin Wu sat at the head of the table with a stack of folders and the self-important air of someone drunk on newfound authority. Beside him, David Park avoided eye contact, his discomfort obvious despite his eager participation in Sterling's regime. Alex, Wu began, using their first name with deliberate familiarity, welcome to your new role. The benefit, David Park interjected, clearly eager to support Sterling, is consistency and accountability. If we make exceptions for personal situations, where does it end? Alex turned to David, feeling the betrayal like a physical wound. They'd worked together for 3 years, had collaborated on successful projects, had grabbed drinks after work and talked about their shared goals for TechVanguard's future. David, you know Elena's work quality. You've seen her solve problems that stumped senior developers. How does forcing her to choose between her job and her daughter serve any business purpose? It serves the purpose, Sterling's voice rose, filling the room with unmistakable authority, of establishing that this company's priorities come first. Dr. Rivera, your attachment to individual employees is clouding your judgment. Leadership requires making difficult decisions that prioritize organizational needs over personal convenience. Personal convenience? Alex's voice sharpened. Single mothers managing childcare isn't convenience, it's reality for a significant portion of our workforce. Then perhaps, Sterling said, his tone dropping to something dangerously quiet, that portion of our workforce needs to decide if they're truly committed to excellence. The room fell silent. Alex looked around the table, seeing their colleagues' faces, some uncomfortable, some avoiding eye contact entirely, and David Park nodding in agreement with Sterling's assessment. Marcus. Alex used Sterling's first name deliberately, watching. His eyes narrow at the familiarity. These policies will gut our innovation capacity. Our best work comes from diverse teams with different perspectives and life experiences. You're creating a monoculture. I'm creating a results-driven culture, Sterling replied. And Dr. Rivera, I'm growing concerned about your ability to adapt to that culture. The threat was clear. delivered with the precision of someone who'd orchestrated this confrontation from the beginning. Alex realized they were being set up, pushed into a position where they'd have to choose between their principles and their position. "I'll adapt to any culture that serves the company's best interests," Alex said carefully, "but I won't implement policies that damage our competitive advantages for ideological reasons." Sterling's smile was cold. Ideological reasons. Interesting phrase coming from someone who seems to prioritize social considerations over business metrics. "I prioritize sustainable business practices that retain talent and maintain our reputation as an employer of choice." "Dr. Rivera," Sterling's voice carried final warning, "I need to know that my leadership team is aligned with our new direction. Completely aligned. Is that something you can commit to?" Alex felt the weight of the moment. Around the table, their colleagues waited for their response. Elena was probably back at her desk, wondering if her request would ever be approved. Becca was managing teams under increasingly impossible conditions, and Sterling was offering them a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. "I'm committed to TechVanguard's success," Alex said finally. "That commitment includes advocating for policies that actually serve our long-term interests." Sterling's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. "I see. Well, Dr. Rivera, I think we need to have a more detailed conversation about your role in our new organizational structure. My office, tomorrow morning at 8. The meeting continued, but Alex barely heard the rest. They'd just drawn a line in the sand, and Sterling had done the same. Tomorrow's conversation wouldn't be a discussion. It would be an ultimatum. As the meeting ended and people filed out, David Park lingered by Sterling's side, already positioning himself as the loyal lieutenant. Alex watched them speak in low tones, saw David's eager nodding, and realized that their former colleague had chosen his side in the coming war. The battle for TechVanguard's soul was about to begin in earnest, and Alex Rivera had just painted a target on their back. Alex arrived at Sterling's office at precisely 8 a.m., having spent a sleepless night crafting arguments they hoped might save not just their position, but the collaborative culture that had made TechVanguard successful. The CEO's assistant, a nervous-looking woman Alex didn't recognize, gestured them toward the closed door without making eye contact. Sterling's office had been completely transformed. Gone were the previous CEO's casual seating areas and open bookshelves filled with tech industry memoirs. In their place stood a fortress of dark wood furniture, military commendations in precise frames, and a massive desk positioned to force visitors to look up at Sterling's elevated chair. "Dr. Rivera," Sterling didn't rise or offer a handshake. "Please sit." The chair facing Sterling's desk was noticeably lower, another power play that Alex recognized but chose not to acknowledge. They settled in, meeting Sterling's gaze directly. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday," Alex began, "and I've prepared some data on how flexible scheduling has impacted our productivity metrics." "That won't be necessary," Sterling interrupted. "Dr. Rivera, I've made a decision about your role in this organization. I've prepared a comprehensive orientation on documentation standards and process improvement protocols." Alex sat down, studying Wu's face. They'd worked with him for 2 years, had seen him struggle with complex assignments, had covered for his mistakes more than once. Now he held their career in his hands. "Your first assignment," Wu continued, "is a complete audit of previous operational decisions made under the old collaborative framework. Sterling wants a detailed analysis of inefficiencies caused by consensus-based management." The assignment was clear retaliation, forcing Alex to write a critique of their own successful leadership approach. Alex looked at the thick folder. Wu pushed across the table, filled with projects they'd managed, teams they'd built, successes they'd achieved through the very methods Sterling wanted them to condemn. "Kevin," Alex said quietly, "you know these projects succeeded. Morrison Logistics, the Peterson integration, the emergency server migration last spring. We delivered results ahead of schedule and under budget. Under the old metrics, Wu replied, his tone suggesting he'd practiced this response. Sterling's analysis shows those projects could have been completed faster and more efficiently with proper hierarchical management. Sterling wasn't here for those projects, Alex pointed out. He has no basis for that analysis. Dr. Rivera, Wu's voice hardened, your job is to document the findings, not question the analysis. I trust that's something you can handle. Alex recognized the trap. Refuse the assignment and they'd be terminated for insubordination. Complete it honestly, and they'd be documenting evidence of Sterling's failures to understand TechVanguard's operational reality. Complete it as Wu clearly wanted, and they'd be betraying everything they'd built. I'll need access to full project files, Alex said finally. Restricted access only. Wu will determine what information you need. Of course, they couldn't even properly document their own work without Wu's permission. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, Wu outlining restrictions and reporting requirements that made Alex's new role clear. They were being buried in bureaucratic make-work, stripped of authority and influence, turned into a cautionary tale for anyone considering resistance. When it finally ended, Alex walked to their former office to collect personal items. They found Becca there, tears streaming down her face as she boxed up files. Becca? What's happening? Sterling called me in this morning. Becca's voice shook. Said my role as your deputy was being eliminated, restructuring for efficiency. She gestured helplessly at the boxes. 15 years at this company, Alex. I put my kids through daycare, worked weekends, built relationships with every client, and now... What did he offer you? Junior project coordinator, reporting to David Park. Becca's laugh was bitter. 40% pay cut, but I should be grateful for the opportunity to prove my commitment to the new direction. Alex felt something break inside their chest. Becca Torres was one of the most competent managers at TechVanguard, respected by clients and colleagues alike. Her demotion was purely punitive, punishment for loyalty to Alex's collaborative approach. Becca, you don't have to accept this. Yes, I do. Becca's voice was flat. My husband's still unemployed. My kids need health insurance. I can't afford principals, Alex. I wish I could, but I can't. Alex helped Becca carry boxes to her much smaller new office, watching their former deputy try to maintain dignity while everything she'd built was systematically dismantled. Other employees watched the procession with expressions ranging from sympathy to fear, all of them calculating their own vulnerability. By lunchtime, word had spread through the company. Marcus Sterling was conducting a purge. Alex's demotion and Becca's reassignment were just the beginning. 3 other managers who'd been part of the collaborative leadership structure found themselves reassigned to lesser roles or placed on performance improvement plans. Sarah Chen appeared at Alex's temporary workspace late in the afternoon, her face grim. I tried to intervene with the board, she said quietly. Thomas Hartwell said the CEO needs operational autonomy to implement his vision. That interference from board members would undermine his authority. So that's it? Alex asked. Sterling has carte blanche to destroy everything we built? I'm still pushing, but the other board members are risk-averse. They're afraid of appearing to micromanage so early in Sterling's tenure. Sarah's frustration was evident. Alex, I'm sorry. I brought you into this company, mentored you, watched you grow into the leader TechVanguard needed. And now I can't protect you from this. Alex squeezed Sarah's shoulder. You gave me the chance to build something meaningful. That matters, regardless of how this ends. As Sarah left, Alex looked around at the diminished office space, the scattered boxes, the employees walking with the careful posture of people afraid to attract attention. Sterling had accomplished more than just removing potential opposition. He'd created an atmosphere of fear that would make future resistance nearly impossible. But as Alex watched Elena frantically typing at her desk, probably trying to complete extra work to compensate for her inflexibility, and saw Becca in her cramped new office trying to rebuild her professional dignity, they realized something important. Sterling might have won this battle, but his victory was built on destroying the very people who'd made TechVanguard successful. And that kind of victory, Alex suspected, had a way of becoming its own defeat. The question was whether the company would survive long enough for that truth to become apparent. 2 weeks into Sterling's new regime, the first project deadline missed its target by 3 days. Alex learned about it not through official channels. Their special projects role had effectively cut them off from operational information, but through Elena's worried whispers during a chance encounter in the Jussiaum break room. "The Richardson account integration," Elena said, glancing around nervously before continuing. "David's team couldn't get the API calls working properly. The client's furious." Alex frowned. They'd overseen the initial Richardson discussions, had helped design the integration approach that should have been straightforward. What went wrong? David assigned it to Jake Morrison as lead, but Jake's never handled API integration at that scale. When he ran into problems, David told him to figure it out instead of collaborating with the senior developers. Elena's voice dropped further. Wu said asking for help showed weakness under the new accountability standards. The break room felt suddenly claustrophobic. Alex watched Elena fidget with her coffee cup, seeing the stress lines that had appeared around her eyes in the past 2 weeks. "How are you holding up?" "My schedule request is still pending. Sophia's daycare sent another warning about late pickups. I've been staying until 6 every night to show commitment, but then I'm racing across town and—" Elena's voice cracked. Slightly. "I can't keep this up much longer." Alex wanted to offer help, advice, anything. But their new role came with explicit restrictions about interfering with operational matters. Wu had made it clear that any attempt to provide guidance to their former team members would be considered insubordination. Their conversation was interrupted by raised voices from the corridor. Through the break room's glass wall, they could see David Park on his phone, his face flushed with frustration. "No, Mr. Morrison, I understand your concerns, but the delay was due to unforeseen technical complexities," David was saying. His voice carried the strained tone of someone trying to project confidence while drowning in problems they didn't understand. Alex and Elena exchanged glances. James Morrison, no relation to their developer Jake, was TechVanguard's largest client, a logistics company whose contract renewal was crucial to the company's financial stability. Morrison had worked with Alex's team for 3 years, building a relationship based on reliable delivery and open communication. David's conversation grew more heated. "Sir, I can assure you that we have our best people working on—" "Yes, I understand this impacts your quarterly projections." "No, we can't provide a definitive timeline until—" Elena winced. "Morrison's contract is up for renewal next month. If we lose them—" Alex knew the numbers. Morrison Logistics represented nearly 30% of TechVanguard's annual revenue. Losing that contract would force layoffs, budget cuts, and potentially threaten the company's survival. The call ended with David's shoulders sagging in defeat. He glanced toward the break room, saw Alex watching, and his expression hardened with defensive anger before he stalked away. "I should get back," Elena said, but hesitated. "Alex, can I ask you something? Off the record?" Alex nodded. "Is it normal for everything to feel this chaotic? I mean, I'm new to corporate environments, but this seems—" "It's not normal," Alex said quietly. "Good organizations have systems in place to handle challenges. They don't create additional obstacles and then blame people for struggling." Elena's relief was visible. "I thought maybe I just wasn't cut out for this level of responsibility. Elena, you're one of the most capable developers I've ever worked with. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." After Elena left, Alex returned to their cramped workspace and the endless documentation assignment Wu had given them. The project files told a story Sterling would never want to acknowledge. Collaborative decision-making had consistently delivered better results than hierarchical mandates. The Morrison integration, the Peterson account, the emergency server migration that had saved the company's reputation, all had succeeded through the inclusive approach Sterling was systematically dismantling. Alex's phone buzzed with a text from Becca. "Can you meet me in the parking garage? Level 3 by the elevators. 5 minutes." The parking garage felt like a scene from a spy movie. Concrete pillars casting long shadows, the constant echo of footsteps from other levels creating an atmosphere of paranoia. Becca appeared from behind a pillar, looking around nervously before approaching. "I needed to talk to someone who'd understand," she said without preamble. "The Chen Industries presentation is next week, and David's asking for things that don't make sense." Alex knew the Chen account, a potential $12 million contract that could offset any losses from other clients. What kind of things? Aggressive timelines that ignore technical constraints. Promise features we haven't even designed yet. David says Sterling wants us to think bigger and commit boldly. Becca's frustration was evident. "Alex, I've been trying to explain the development realities, but David accused me of having a scarcity mindset. Have you documented your concerns?" "I tried. David said my feedback showed I wasn't adapting to the new performance culture. That maybe my reduced role reflected my reduced value to the organization." Becca's voice shook with anger. "Alex, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know what's possible and what isn't. But now questioning unrealistic demands is considered negativity." Alex felt the familiar rage building, not just at Sterling's policies, but at how they were corrupting good people like David Park. David had always been competitive, but he'd never been deliberately cruel. Sterling's influence was turning ambition into ruthlessness. "What are you going to do?" Alex asked. "What can I do? I need this job." "But Alex, if David makes promises we can't keep, Chen Industries will walk away. And then what? How many clients? Can we afford to lose before—" Becca didn't finish the sentence, but Alex understood. TechVanguard was hemorrhaging reputation and talent simultaneously, a combination that could destroy the company's competitive position within months. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Kevin Wu, emerging from the elevator with the purposeful stride of someone on a mission. He spotted them immediately, his expression shifting from surprise to suspicion. "Dr. Rivera, Ms. Torres," Wu approached with the officious bearing of his new authority. "Interesting meeting location." "Just discussing parking assignments," Alex said smoothly. "The new badge access system has been causing some confusion." Wu's smile suggested he didn't believe the explanation. "Dr. Rivera, I've been looking for you. Sterling wants to review your progress on the operational efficiency audit. His office, tomorrow at 9. I'll be there." "And Ms. Torres," Wu turned to Becca. "David mentioned you had concerns about the Chen Industries timeline. Perhaps you'd benefit from additional training on positive communication and strategic thinking." The condescension in Wu's tone made Alex's hands clench, but Becca simply nodded with the careful neutrality of someone who couldn't afford confrontation. After Wu left, Becca turned to Alex with tears in her eyes. "This isn't the company I joined 15 years ago. This isn't the place where my kids learned about integrity and teamwork. What's happening to us?" Alex had no answer. They watched Becca walk to her car, shoulders bent under the weight of diminished expectations and economic necessity. Around them, other employees were heading home, some staying late to demonstrate commitment, others leaving with the beaten posture of people who'd learned that competence no longer mattered as much as compliance. The next morning brought news that crystallized everything Alex had feared. Jake Morrison, the developer who'd struggled with the Richardson integration, had quit. His resignation email, forwarded through unofficial channels, was blunt. "I came, to TechVanguard to learn and grow. Instead, I'm being set up to fail and blamed for systemic problems. I've accepted a position where collaboration is valued over hierarchy. Jake's departure meant David's team was now shorthanded for multiple critical projects, including the Chen Industries presentation. But rather than addressing the underlying problems that had driven Jake away, Sterling's response was predictable: demand longer hours from remaining staff and accelerate the hiring of people who would fit the new cultural requirements. Alex stared at Jake's resignation email, seeing not just one talented developer's departure, but a preview of what was coming. TechVanguard was cannibalizing itself, driving away the very people whose skills and dedication had built its success. The question was no longer whether Sterling's approach would fail, it was how much damage would be done before that failure became undeniable, and whether anything would be left to salvage when the reckoning finally came. Outside Alex's window, Austin's skyline stretched toward the horizon, filled with other tech companies that would welcome TechVanguard's displaced talent. The irony was bitter. Sterling's masculine leadership was about to hand their best people to competitors, along with the institutional knowledge and client relationships that represented TechVanguard's true competitive advantage. The foundation was cracking. Soon, Alex suspected it would collapse entirely. The emergency board meeting was called for 7 a.m. on a Friday, 3 days after James Morrison's phone call had shattered any remaining illusions about Sterling's leadership. Alex learned about it not through official channels, but from Sarah Chen's. Cryptic text: "Storm coming. Document everything you can access." "Alex, I need to show you something," Elena whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "But not here." They found an empty conference room on the far side of the building, away from Sterling's newly established power center. Elena opened her laptop with trembling fingers, revealing a folder labeled Documentation, Personal Insurance. "I've been keeping records," Elena said, her voice barely audible. "Every policy change, every failed project, every instance of retaliation. I know I'm just a junior developer, but I thought, if things got bad enough." Alex stared at the screen. Elena had documented everything. Wu's denial of her schedule request, David Park's mishandling of the Richardson account, the exodus of talent that had accelerated over the past 3 weeks. Most damaging of all were screenshots of Sterling's internal communications, somehow accessed through Elena's system administration credentials. "Elena, how did you get these emails?" "I still have admin access from the server migration project. Sterling's team never revoked it." Elena's voice strengthened slightly. "Alex, look at this one from yesterday." The email was from Sterling to Wu and David Park, sent after James Morrison's devastating phone call. Alex read with growing alarm. "The Morrison situation requires immediate damage control. Our narrative must emphasize external factors beyond our control. Unrealistic client expectations, technical complexities that predated our involvement, and the inevitable challenges of transforming legacy processes. Under no circumstances should anyone acknowledge operational failures or suggest that previous management approaches were superior. David, I need you to prepare a presentation showing how collaborative decision-making contributed to this outcome. Wu, ensure all team communications reflect the official narrative." "He's rewriting history," Alex said, stunned by the blatant dishonesty. "It gets worse." Elena clicked to another email, this one from Sterling to Thomas Hartwell. "He's already preparing to blame the board for insufficient authority to implement necessary changes." Alex felt their stomach drop as they read Sterling's preemptive defense strategy. He was positioning himself as the victim of organizational resistance, setting up a narrative that would protect his reputation at the expense of everyone else's. "Elena, you have to get this to Sarah Chen immediately, before the board meeting." "I can't. If they trace these back to me..." Elena's voice cracked. "Alex, I'm barely hanging on as it is. Sophia's daycare called yesterday. They're going to terminate our contract if I'm late again. Wu's voice strengthened. Dr. Rivera was right about the collaborative approach, about protecting our people, about everything, and I was wrong to help tear it down. Sterling stared at Wu with the shock of ultimate betrayal. His right hand, man, the enforcer of his authority, had just switched sides in front of the board. Thomas, Sterling turned to Hartwell with desperate intensity. You hired me to bring discipline to this organization. That requires difficult decisions that weak leaders avoid. If you undermine my authority now— Marcus, Hartwell's voice, was final. Your authority was contingent on results. You've delivered the opposite. The vote of no confidence was unanimous. Sterling's removal was effective immediately. As the lawyers began discussing transition protocols and legal implications, Alex found themselves staring out the conference room window at Austin's skyline. Somewhere in those buildings, James Morrison was probably meeting with TechVanguard's competitors, taking his $89 million contract to a company that understood the value of collaborative leadership. The question now wasn't whether Sterling's regime had failed. It was whether TechVanguard could survive the damage he'd inflicted, and whether anyone could rebuild what had been so systematically destroyed. Elena Vasquez's courage in documenting the truth had saved the company from further devastation. But salvation and recovery, Alex realized, were two very different things. The silence in TechVanguard's executive conference room was deafening as Dr. Maria Santos closed her laptop and looked across the table at the assembled board members. Her assessment, delivered with the clinical precision of someone who'd witnessed dozens of corporate meltdowns, had taken 2 hours to present. The conclusion was devastating. Gentlemen, Ms. Chen, Dr. Santos began, her voice carrying the authority of 20 years studying organizational psychology. TechVanguard is experiencing what we call systemic cultural collapse. The damage inflicted over the past month isn't just operational. It's psychological, relational, and structural. How long until we can return to normal operations? Board member Richard Walsh asked. Mr. Walsh, there is no normal to return to. The collaborative culture that made this company successful has been systematically dismantled. Trust between management and employees has been shattered. Your institutional knowledge has walked out the door with departing personnel. Santos pulled up a slide showing employee satisfaction scores. These metrics indicate a workplace trauma that will take years to heal, assuming you can implement proper recovery protocols. Sarah Chen leaned forward on the video call. Dr. Santos, what would proper recovery look like? First, you need leadership that employees actually trust. Someone with credibility, proven collaborative skills, and the emotional intelligence to rebuild relationships. Santos paused meaningfully. Second, you need that person to have significant authority to implement cultural changes without board interference. Third, you need to acknowledge that some damage may be irreversible. Key personnel who've left, client relationships that have been destroyed, reputation harm in your industry. Hartwell found himself thinking about Alex Rivera, currently relegated to a meaningless special projects role. The irony wasn't lost on him. The person they'd need to lead recovery was the same person he'd allowed Sterling to systematically humiliate. What if that trusted leader refuses to help? He asked quietly. Santos's smile was knowing. Mr. Hartwell, I've interviewed every remaining employee over the past week. Do you know whose name came up consistently as someone they'd trust to lead recovery efforts? Meanwhile, 3 floors below in the cramped special projects office, Alex Rivera was boxing up their few remaining personal items when Sarah Chen appeared in the doorway. The video call had ended, and Sarah had driven directly from her downtown office to TechVanguard. Alex, we need to talk. If this is about the security breach investigation— Alex gestured to the stack of resignation letters on their desk. Their own, drafted but not yet submitted. I was planning to submit this Monday morning. I've had 3 job offers in the past week. Good offers. Sarah sat down across from Alex, her expression serious. Tell me about them. Senior Operations Director at Dataflow Systems, VP of Engineering at Cloud Tech, Chief Strategy Officer at Morrison Logistics. Alex's voice was flat, emotionless. James Morrison called personally, said he valued what we'd built together and wanted to continue working with someone who understood. Collaborative leadership. Impressive offers. They all start Monday if I want them. I can't afford to lose this job, but I can't afford to keep it either. Alex understood the impossible position Elena was in. Damned if she spoke up, damned if she remained silent. But the evidence she'd gathered could save TechVanguard from Sterling's destructive leadership if it reached the right people. Send everything to my personal email, Alex decided. I'll take responsibility for bringing it forward. Alex, they'll fire you. They're going to fire me anyway, but Elena, you might save this company. By 8 a.m., the crisis had exploded into full view. James Morrison's formal termination of TechVanguard's largest contract arrived via certified letter, copied to the entire board. The language was devastating. Effective immediately, Morrison Logistics is terminating our software development contract with TechVanguard due to repeated delivery failures, unprofessional communication, and a fundamental breakdown in service quality. The hostile and dismissive attitude displayed by your current management team is incompatible with our operational requirements. We will be pursuing alternative vendors who demonstrate the collaborative professionalism we previously valued in our relationship with TechVanguard. Alex was printing Elena's documentation when Kevin Wu burst into the conference room where they'd been working. His face was flushed with panic and anger. Dr. Rivera, Sterling wants to see you immediately. There's been a security breach, and he has questions about your access to sensitive communications. Alex's blood ran cold. Someone had noticed Elena's access to Sterling's emails. I'll be right there. Now, Wu insisted. He's in the boardroom with legal counsel. Thomas Hartwell sat at the head of the table, looking older than his 68 years. Sarah Chen was present via video conference, her expression carefully neutral. Two people Alex didn't recognize, presumably legal counsel, flanked Sterling with briefcases and grim expressions. Dr. Rivera. Sterling's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. We have evidence that confidential communications have been accessed without authorization. Given your recent disagreements with organizational policy, you're our primary suspect. Alex sat down, placing the printed emails on the table. Marcus, before we discuss security breaches, I think the board needs to see what was in those communications. Sterling's face went white. Those documents are privileged and confidential. Any unauthorized access shows a pattern of deception and blame shifting that threatens this company's survival, Alex interrupted, sliding copies toward Hartwell and Chen's camera. Thomas, Sarah, James Morrison didn't leave because of technical challenges. He left because Sterling's team treated a valued client with hostility and incompetence. Dr. Rivera, one of the lawyers interjected, accessing confidential communications is grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal charges. Then you should probably read what those communications say before deciding whether prosecution serves TechVanguard's interests, Alex replied evenly. Hartwell was already scanning the emails, his expression darkening with each page. Through the video link, Sarah Chen's face showed a mixture of vindication and alarm as she read her copy. Marcus, Hartwell's voice carried the weight of 40 years in business. Did you really send an email instructing staff to blame collaborative management for your operational failures? Sterling's composure finally cracked. Thomas, you have to understand the context. Rivera and their allies have been undermining every reform I've tried to implement. This company was hemorrhaging efficiency before I arrived, and now they're sabotaging. The only thing being sabotaged, Sarah Chen's voice cut through the video link, is TechVanguard's reputation. Marcus, in 3 weeks you've lost our largest client, driven away a dozen skilled employees. and created a workplace culture so toxic that people are documenting abuses for their own protection. $89 million in lost revenue isn't temporary disruption, Hartwell said quietly. It's catastrophic failure. The room fell silent. Alex watched Sterling's face cycle through denial, anger, and something approaching panic as the reality of his situation became clear. The board hadn't called this meeting to support his damage control narrative. They'd called it to hold him accountable. Kevin Wu, who had been silent since delivering Alex to the meeting, suddenly spoke up. "I need to say something." All eyes turned to Sterling's lieutenant, the man who'd been enforcing the new regime's harshest policies. "Marcus, I went along with your methods because I thought you knew what you were doing. But watching good people leave, seeing projects fail because we couldn't ask for help." Alex met Sarah's eyes. "Sarah, I'm done with this place. Sterling broke something here that can't be fixed. What if I told you Sterling was just the beginning of the damage? That without intervention, TechVanguard won't exist in 6 months?" Alex frowned. "What do you mean?" Sarah pulled out Dr. Santos's preliminary report. "We brought in an organizational psychologist to assess the damage. Alex, it's worse than anyone realized. We're looking at complete operational collapse within months unless someone can rebuild the culture and retain remaining talent." Alex scanned the report, their expression growing increasingly troubled. "These employee satisfaction scores. My God, Sarah, what has Sterling done to these people? What you said he'd do, what you warned us about from the beginning." Sarah's voice carried genuine regret. "Alex, I know we failed you. I know the board, including me, didn't protect you when we should have. But these people, Elena, Becca, the developers who are still here, they're drowning. Then hire someone to save them. You have resources, connections. They don't want someone new. They want someone they trust. Someone who's proven they'll fight for their people even when it costs everything." Sarah leaned forward. "Alex, every person Santos interviewed mentioned your name. Not as their former boss, but as the leader they'd follow into hell if necessary." Alex felt something crack in their chest. "Sarah, they demoted me to special projects. They stripped away my authority, humiliated me publicly, made me watch while good people suffered. How do I come back from that? By choosing to come back? At all." Sarah's voice softened. "Alex, I've known you for 8 years. Watched you grow from an ambitious MBA graduate into the best operational leader I've ever worked with. This company doesn't deserve you, but those employees do." Alex's phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "My last day is Friday. Got an offer? At Austin Tech Solutions. I'm sorry, Alex. I can't fight anymore." The message hit like a physical blow. Elena Vasquez, the brilliant developer who'd risked everything to document Sterling's failures, who'd saved the company by providing evidence of his incompetence, was giving up. If Elena left, others would follow, and the brain drain would become unstoppable. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Alex asked quietly. "Come back as Chief Operating Officer. Full authority over operations, hiring, and cultural rebuilding. Report directly to the board, not to whatever interim CEO we find. Carte blanche to implement whatever changes you think necessary. And if I say no, then TechVanguard dies, 200 people lose their jobs, and everyone who believed in collaborative leadership learns that toxic behavior wins in the end." Sarah's voice was stark. "Alex, I'm not just asking you to save the company. I'm asking you to prove that doing the right thing ultimately matters." Alex stared at Elena's text message, thinking about all the other employees who were probably updating their resumes, reaching out to recruiters, preparing to abandon the sinking ship that TechVanguard had become. If they'll come. "I'd want to restructure completely. Eliminate the hierarchy Sterling created. Restore collaborative decision-making. Implement protections against future authoritarian leadership. The board will support whatever you recommend. And I'd want a public acknowledgement that the previous approach was wrong. Not just Sterling's removal, but an actual admission that collaborative leadership works better than authoritarian control. Sarah nodded. I think that can be arranged. Alex looked around the cramped office, thinking about the corner workspace they'd occupied as head of operations, the teams they'd built, the culture they'd helped create. All of it destroyed in a matter of weeks by someone who'd confused dominance with leadership. I need 24 hours to think about it. Alex, Elena's giving notice Friday. If we lose her... I know. Alex stood up, resignation letter still in their hands. Sarah, if I do this, it won't be to save TechVanguard. It'll be to save the people who trusted me and got burned because I couldn't protect them. That's exactly why it has to be you. As Sarah left, Alex stared out the window at Austin's tech corridor, seeing the buildings that housed competitors who were probably already recruiting TechVanguard's disillusioned employees. The safe choice was obvious. Take Morrison's offer. Start fresh somewhere that valued their skills. Avoid the massive challenge of rebuilding a shattered organization. But Elena's text message burned in their mind, along with the memory of Becca Torres crying as she packed up her office, of talented developers leaving rather than endure Sterling's toxic regime, of a collaborative culture that had taken years to build being destroyed in weeks. The question wasn't whether TechVanguard deserved saving. The question was whether the people still trapped inside it did. And despite everything that had happened, Alex already knew the answer to that. Alex Rivera walked into TechVanguard's main conference room at exactly 9 a.m. Monday morning, carrying a leather portfolio that contained either the company's salvation or their own professional suicide note. The entire board was present, Thomas Hartwell at the head of the table, Sarah Chen participating via video from San Francisco, and 3 other board members whose faces had become unfamiliar over Sterling's destructive tenure. Thank you for coming, Alex, Hartwell began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd spent the weekend contemplating his role in the crisis. I know this hasn't been an easy decision. Alex set their portfolio on the table, but didn't open it. Before we discuss my potential return, I need you to understand something. I'm not here to rescue TechVanguard's stock price. I'm here because good people are suffering, and I might be able to help them. The directness caught Hartwell off guard. During Alex's previous interactions with the board, they'd been deferential, respectful of hierarchy. That person was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned the cost of deference to authority. We're prepared to offer you unprecedented autonomy, Sarah Chen said from the screen. Let's be specific. Alex opened their portfolio and pulled out a typewritten document. I've prepared non-negotiable conditions for my return. If you can't agree to all of them, this conversation ends now. Board member Richard Walsh shifted uncomfortably. Alex, we're certainly willing to negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. These aren't opening positions. They're requirements based on what I've learned about this company's capacity for self-destruction. Hartwell gestured for Alex to continue. First, I report directly to this board, not to any CEO or interim management. No one has authority to countermand my operational decisions. Alex's voice carried quiet finality. Sterling's authority came from this board, and you used it to justify his destructive policies. That won't happen again. Agreed, Sarah said quickly. What's second? Complete reversal of Sterling's changes. Every demotion reversed, every punitive policy eliminated, every driven-away employee gets a formal offer to return with full compensation for their interim period. Some have already accepted other positions, Hartwell pointed out. The board members exchanged glances, calculating costs. Third, public acknowledgement that Sterling's approach was fundamentally flawed. Not just his removal, but explicit statement that collaborative leadership produces better results. That could expose us to legal liability, Walsh worried. You should have considered that before hiring someone whose previous companies all experienced similar collapses. Alex's weekend. Research had been thorough. Sterling's pattern is consistent. Short-term improvements, long-term disasters. You ignored that. Hartwell read through Alex's conditions, his expression troubled. You want authority to restructure our board oversight processes? This board hired Sterling despite obvious red flags, gave him unlimited authority, and ignored warnings about damage. Alex's voice hardened. I won't rebuild this company only to watch you hire another authoritarian in 2 years. What exactly are you proposing? Sarah asked. Mandatory psychological assessments for C-suite hiring, board training on toxic leadership patterns, employee feedback mechanisms that can't be overridden by executives. The room fell silent as they processed the implications. Alex was demanding they acknowledge their failures and accept limitations on future authority. And if your approach doesn't deliver results, Walsh asked, fire me for measurable performance failures, not ideological disagreements. Sterling delivered disaster in 3 weeks. I'm asking for 3 years to rebuild what he destroyed. You also want us to publicly apologize to affected employees? Hartwell continued reading. People who risked careers opposing Sterling's policies deserve acknowledgement they were right. Alex leaned back. Either you're serious about change, or you're looking for someone to blame when quarterly reports disappoint investors. Minutes passed in silence as board members considered the demands. Alex, Hartwell finally spoke, do you believe TechVanguard can recover? I believe the people who made this company successful could be brought back. I believe collaborative leadership works. And I believe organizations can learn from failures if they admit they happened. Alex met each board member's eyes. But recovery requires sustained commitment to doing things differently, even when uncomfortable or expensive. Sterling's failure wasn't just about him. It was about a board that prioritized appearance of strong leadership over effective leadership. That has to change. Hartwell looked around the table, seeing nods. These conditions are significant. We need to discuss them. Take your time, Alex stood, leaving their demands on the table. But every day you deliberate is another day good people submit resignations. Elena gave notice Friday. Others are updating resumes. How long do we have to prevent collapse? Sarah asked. Dr. Santos estimated 6 months. I think she's optimistic. As Alex left, heated discussion erupted behind the closed door. The board would argue about liability. The choice was entirely up to them. Alex's first all-hands meeting as chief operating officer took place in the same auditorium where Sterling had announced his masculine leadership philosophy 6 weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Employees filled the same seats, but their faces showed a mixture of cautious hope and deep skepticism born from recent trauma. I'm not going to pretend the past month didn't happen, Alex began, standing without a podium between them and the audience. Marcus Sterling's leadership caused real damage to projects, to relationships, to people's careers and sense of security. Some of you were demoted unfairly. Others were driven away entirely. Many of you lost faith that this company values the principles that originally drew you here. Elena Vasquez sat in the 3rd row, having returned that morning after TechVanguard, matched Morrison Logistics' offer and added a 20% retention bonus. Her expression remained guarded. The eager enthusiasm that had once characterized her participation in meetings had been replaced by careful wariness. The board has asked me to apologize on behalf of the organization, Alex continued, but apologies without action are meaningless. So instead of just saying we're sorry, I want to tell you what we're doing differently. Alex clicked to their first slide, an organizational chart that looked nothing like Sterling's rigid hierarchy. We're returning to collaborative leadership. Structures. Project teams will make technical decisions. Department heads will support their teams rather than controlling them. And we're implementing formal protections to prevent authoritarian management from taking root again. Becca Torres, reinstated as Deputy Operations Director with her previous salary and responsibilities, nodded from her front row seat. The past month had aged her. stress lines around her eyes, a careful composure that hadn't existed before. Sterling's regime. But she was here, and that meant something. "I know trust isn't rebuilt with presentations," Alex said, advancing to their next slide. "It's rebuilt through consistent actions over time. So I want to share our immediate priorities and our long-term commitments." The first priority was client retention. Morrison Logistics was gone. James Morrison had politely but firmly declined overtures about renewing the contract. But other clients were wavering. The Chen Industries presentation, botched under David Park's aggressive management style, needed complete reconstruction. David, Alex looked toward their former colleague, who'd accepted a reduced role with surprising grace. "I'd like you to partner with Elena on rebuilding the Chen proposal. Use your business development expertise alongside her technical knowledge. Collaborative approach, realistic timelines." David Park nodded, his earlier opportunism tempered by weeks of watching Sterling's methods fail spectacularly. "I'd welcome Elena's input. My previous approach was overly ambitious." The admission drew murmurs of surprise. David's willingness to acknowledge mistakes represented a fundamental shift from Sterling's blame deflection culture. Alex spent 20 minutes outlining policy changes, flexible, scheduling restored, collaborative decision-making formalized, employee feedback mechanisms protected from management retaliation. But the real test would come in daily operations, in how conflicts were resolved and decisions were made. "Questions?" Alex asked. A hand went up in the back. Jake Morrison, no relation to the client, had returned from his brief stint at another company, drawn back by promises of cultural change and a significant salary increase. "Alex, what happens if this doesn't work? If we can't rebuild client trust, or if collaborative leadership doesn't deliver the results the board expects? Then we fail honestly instead of succeeding through fear and intimidation," Alex replied. "But Jake, I don't think we're going to fail. Sterling's approach destroyed relationships and drove away talent in weeks. Collaborative leadership built this company's reputation over years. Which approach do you think has better long-term odds?" After the meeting, Alex walked through the office space, noting subtle changes in atmosphere. Conversations seemed less guarded. People made eye contact. The careful tension that had characterized Sterling's regime was beginning to ease. But the real work was just beginning. That afternoon brought the first crisis, a critical bug in the Peterson account integration that threatened another client. Relationship. Under Sterling's system, someone would be blamed, punished, potentially terminated. Alex called an emergency team meeting including Elena, David, Becca, and the 2 developers who'd discovered the bug. "What happened, and how did we fix it?" The next 3 hours demonstrated everything Alex believed about collaborative leadership. Instead of hiding mistakes or deflecting responsibility, team members openly discussed the bug's origins, brainstormed solutions, and developed a comprehensive fix that actually improved the system's overall stability. By evening, they'd not only resolved the crisis, but strengthened their relationship with Peterson Industries through transparent communication and rapid response. "This," Alex told Becca as they finally headed home, "is how we rebuild. One crisis at a time, one relationship at a time, one decision at a time." Becca smiled, the first genuine smile Alex had seen from her since Sterling's arrival. "It feels good to solve problems instead of just surviving them." TechVanguard's recovery had begun. The question now was whether they could sustain collaborative leadership long enough to prove its superiority over the authoritarian alternative that had nearly destroyed them. 6 months after Sterling's departure, Alex Rivera arrived at the office to find Elena Vasquez pacing outside the conference room, her laptop clutched against her chest and panic written across her face. "Alex, the entire authentication system is down," Elena said, her voice tight with controlled fear. "Meridian can't access any of their data." Their CFO is threatening to terminate the contract if we don't have it fixed by end of business today. Under Sterling's regime, this would have been a blame-seeking crisis. Someone would be fired, others would distance themselves from responsibility, and the client would be fed excuses and deflections. Alex felt the familiar weight of leadership, the choice between old patterns and new principles. "Conference room in 5 minutes," Alex said calmly. "Get David, Becca, Jake Morrison, and the entire integration team, all hands on deck." The conference room filled quickly. Alex noted the subtle differences in how people entered. No one looked afraid, but everyone understood the stakes. Meridian represented $15 million in annual revenue and the validation of TechVanguard's post-Sterling recovery. "Status report," Alex began, standing at the whiteboard rather than sitting at the head of the table. "No blame, no excuses. What happened and what do we know?" Elena pulled up system logs. On the main screen, the authentication service crashed at 2:17 a.m. Initial diagnosis suggests a cascade failure triggered by the security update we pushed yesterday evening. "My update," Jake Morrison said immediately, his face pale. "I approved the security patch. Without full regression testing because Meridian's compliance team was pressuring us for faster deployment." Alex watched the room carefully. Under the old system, Jake's admission would have made him a target. Under collaborative leadership, it made him a valuable source of information. "Jake, thank you for the honesty," Alex said. "That helps us understand the timeline." "Elena, what's our recovery strategy?" For the next hour, the team worked with an intensity and focus that demonstrated everything Alex believed about collaborative crisis management. Instead of hiding information or protecting themselves, team members shared insights, admitted uncertainties, and built solutions collectively. David Park, fully rehabilitated from his Sterling-era opportunism, coordinated client communication, while technical teams worked on fixes. "I've got Meridian's IT director on standby," he reported. "They're frustrated but willing to work with us if we can show progress." By noon, they'd not only identified the root cause, but developed a fix that actually improved system security beyond the original specifications. More importantly, they'd maintained transparent communication with Meridian throughout the crisis. "This is exactly the kind of response we were hoping for," Meridian's CFO said during the afternoon status call. "Honest communication, collaborative, problem-solving, and improvements that benefit everyone. This is why we chose TechVanguard over your competitors." As the crisis resolved, Alex realized something profound had happened. The team hadn't just fixed a technical problem. They'd demonstrated that collaborative leadership worked under pressure, that transparency built trust rather than destroying it, and that TechVanguard had genuinely transformed its culture. "I've been watching TechVanguard's recovery," Morrison said, settling into a chair. "The Meridian response today was impressive. My team's been monitoring your public communications, client feedback, employee satisfaction scores. You've actually done it, haven't you? Rebuilt the culture Sterling destroyed?" Alex nodded carefully. "We've made progress. Enough progress that Morrison Logistics would like to discuss renewing our partnership," Morrison said. "Not the full contract immediately, but a pilot project. Something that lets us test whether TechVanguard can deliver the collaborative relationship we valued before." The offer represented more than financial recovery. It was validation that principled leadership could restore even the most damaged relationships. Alex thought about Sterling, probably at another company implementing his masculine leadership philosophy, likely unaware that his former organization was proving his entire worldview wrong. "We'd welcome that opportunity," Alex said finally, "under whatever terms make you comfortable." 1 year after Marcus Sterling's departure, Alex Rivera stood before a packed auditorium at the Austin Tech Leadership Conference, looking out at an audience that included competitors, potential clients, and business school students. The invitation to deliver the keynote on collaborative leadership in crisis had come from the same industry association that had once celebrated Sterling's appointment as a bold leadership choice. A year ago, TechVanguard was hemorrhaging talent, losing clients, and facing potential bankruptcy. Alex began, clicking to a slide showing the company's dramatic recovery metrics. Today, we've not only recovered but achieved record profitability while maintaining the highest employee satisfaction scores in our industry. The difference wasn't luck or market conditions, it was leadership philosophy. In the front row, Elena Vasquez sat with her new title of Senior Engineering Manager, her confidence fully restored after months of collaborative leadership. Beside her, David Park, now head of client relations, took notes on Alex's presentation, planning to share insights with his team. The transformation in David had been perhaps the most remarkable of all, proving that even opportunistic behavior could be redirected toward positive outcomes under the right leadership. The masculine leadership model that nearly destroyed our company wasn't unique to one individual, Alex continued, advancing to a slide showing industry-wide statistics on authoritarian management failures. It's a systemic problem that costs billions in lost productivity, talent retention, and innovation, but it's also entirely preventable. Alex shared TechVanguard's recovery story, the difficult board negotiations, the patient rebuilding of trust, the collaborative crisis management that had impressed clients like Meridian Industries and won back Morrison Logistics. But more than tactics, they emphasized principles: transparency over control, empowerment over intimidation, sustainable success over short-term dominance. During the Q&A, a young executive raised her hand. Dr. Rivera, how do you respond to critics who say, collaborative leadership is too slow for today's competitive environment? Alex smiled, thinking of the Meridian crisis that had been resolved in hours through team collaboration, rather than the weeks of blame shifting that would have characterized Sterling's approach. Speed isn't about bypassing input, it's about having systems that enable rapid, informed decision-making. When people trust their leaders and feel empowered to contribute, they move faster, not slower. After the presentation, Alex was approached by Dr. Maria Santos, the organizational psychologist who'd assessed TechVanguard's damage the previous year. Alex, I've been tracking your recovery metrics, Santos said. They're unprecedented. Most companies that experience the level of cultural trauma TechVanguard suffered never fully recover. What you've accomplished is going to reshape how we think about organizational resilience. It wasn't just me, Alex replied. It was people like Elena, Becca, David, even employees who left and came back. They chose to believe collaborative leadership could work, even after experiencing its opposite. That evening, TechVanguard held its annual company retreat at a lakeside resort outside Austin. Alex looked around at employees laughing, collaborating, genuinely enjoying each other's company. And now? Alex watched Elena presenting a technical innovation to an enthusiastic group, David facilitating a discussion about client needs, Jake Morrison mentoring a new developer with patience and encouragement. Somewhere in Austin, Sterling was probably implementing his masculine leadership philosophy at another company, creating another cycle of short-term gains and long-term destruction. Now I know that doing the right thing isn't just morally superior, it's practically more effective. Sustainable success requires authentic relationships, shared commitment, and leaders who understand that their job is to empower others, not dominate them. TechVanguard's transformation had become a case study taught in business schools, proving that collaborative leadership could deliver both financial success and human dignity. But for Alex, the real victory was simpler: good people doing meaningful work in an environment that respected their contributions and supported their growth. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges that would test their commitment to collaborative principles. But Alex faced it with confidence born from experience. They had built something that could survive crisis, adapt to change, and prove that authentic leadership ultimately triumphed over its authoritarian alternative. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.